Hey, this is Phil Caivano from Monster Magnet. You're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at NoShockPod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Phil Caivano of Monster Magnet.
Promoting his only solo album. It was released here this past late summer.
It's a great album. Get out there and check it out.
Yeah, let's get right to that interview.
All right.
Good night. Phil, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Phil, thanks for joining us tonight.
Oh, man, my pleasure. Good to meet you guys.
Yeah, we were so excited. Yeah, we're so excited to have you. Excited that your press person reached out to us and asked us, hey, would you consider Phil to come on the podcast? We're like, hell yes. So, absolutely.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, well, let's get right into it. Late this past July of 2023, you released your first solo endeavor, Caivano. Can you give our listeners an insight to the creative journey of this album?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it really started a little bit, like pre-2020. I've always been stockpiling riffs and never really had a desire to do a side band or a side band to get out there like a lot of guys in bands like to do. I've always been really, really creatively and inspired and fulfilled in Monster Magnet. Being with Windorf, my childhood buddy has been amazing. I've never really was straying I've always been fulfilled there musically, and then as time went on and I did a couple things here and there and with other people, and it started bubbling up about maybe it's time at this time of my life and at my age to do a solo record, so that was in the back of my mind. And then when 2020 hit with all the downtime and a lot of our stuff, Magnet stuff getting postponed and canceled, things were booked, things got canceled, things got postponed. I had all this free time, and especially with the shelter in place and all the isolation stuff, I was in my studio all the time, just tinkering around. And I started digging up some of these riffs and files I had and listening to them back. And I was like, no, maybe I do have the nucleus of something here. So that really, having the free time really inspired me to do it and finish it.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's how that all kind of happened. Yeah.
Well, had you messed around with vocals previously, taking on the lead singer part, or is that something that's new?
I did it years ago in a band I was in called Blitzbeer. I was the lead singer in that band. I really wouldn't call it singer. Call it like, we'll call it vocalist, because I really wouldn't consider myself a singer. But no, I never really thought about it that much for all these years. Again, being you're playing guitar, playing bass, production, engineering has become my thing for a lot of years now. And and I've done backup vocals on Magnet stuff and other projects I've worked on in the studio, with other bands I've been in the studio with, like get a gang vocal going and get all that happening. But to be in front of the mic by myself was kind of trying, it was kind of like nerve wracking. And, I kind of got what being an engineer and being a producer, what goes through guys' minds who get in front of a microphone. It's like, it's you. Yeah. There's nothing to hide behind. It's a microphone and you, and it's not like being a guitar player or a bass player where, you got all your gadgets and all your fuzz and all your loudness. And, it's like once you open your mouth, that microphone don't lie. So first time I did it, I was like, I was talking to Windorf about it. He's like, you just got to do it. You can stop fucking around with your guitars. Get in front of the microphone. Because I was in touch with Dave and some of my other close friends and engineer buddies of mine about the process. Because once I started to take it on, I was like, I'm going to do this thing, but being a guitar player and a lover of gadgets and stuff, I was like, I'll do it a lead, but I'll do it different this time. And I was avoiding it. And thank God my buddies were just like, no, turn that all off, put that microphone up. You got some lyrics, get out there and put your vocals on this music you're creating.
Fantastic.
So I did it.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, the entire album is a complete banger. And my favorite track is Now Is Forever. Can you talk a little bit more about the writing and recording of that track?
Well, that's funny. Like, that's the first track. So that's a song I was doing a little project with a friend of mine, Todd Youth, years ago. Like, it was a thing Todd really wanted to do. He kind of dug me up and was like, hey, let's do this thing together. We'll call it Capricorn. It was all really his thing. And then it snowballed to me. And we were throwing, emailing each other riffs back and forth. And we did a single back then. And when I was going through some stuff, I found that song and I was like, this song's pretty good. I kind of like it. It's really simple. It's straight ahead. It's kind of what I'm all about, like the simplicity and where I'm at in my life right now musically. I just wanted to do something simple and straight ahead. And I listened to that track back. I had a little demo of it. I was like, this ain't bad, man, And so when, I worked with Bob Pantella on it, it was the first song I played for Bob because I was like, looking for a drummer because I can't play drums. I was like, who's better to work with than Bobby? And, I brought him 3 songs over and that was the first one I played for him. He's like, yeah, man, let me do my thing with this one and, operate, you record it, let me play. And that was the first track that I recorded. So I dig that that's the one that a lot of people kind of go to because it kind of opened the door for me to finish everything and do it.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. The opening track, Come and Get Me, right from the start, it kind of got the vibe of wanting to jump in the car and turn it up loud. Can you talk a little bit about picking that track as the opener?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, man. Like I am actually doing this interview from my car parked on the side of the road because that's how I do it. There's nothing better for me than hearing something that makes me want to get in my car, put the windows down and turn it the fuck up and take a drive. I'm from Jersey, man. Like a lot of and you guys, you're from the Midwest. Yep. It's in our culture. It's in our blood. There's nothing better than I remember being a teenager and rigging an 8-track player and putting 2 stereo speakers in my back seat of my first car. And that's how I would drive around. We would drive around and listen to music all day and all night. So that was kind of my intention for that song. I figured it was like a banger. Um, I like the whole. It's got that like kind of Hawkwind-esque, like real steady, straight beat that I came up with Bob. And when I was going through the sequencing of the record, I was like, everywhere I tried to place it in the sequence, it didn't really work for me. I was like, well, just open the record up with that. Why not set the tone? That's it. That's who you are. Like, and kind of like, and lyrically, this is where I'm at. You come and fucking get me, motherfucker. This is me. This is where I'm at. I'm over here. I'm doing this now. And that's what we're going to do. So I like that. I like that it inclines people to get in their car and drive down the fucking road and maybe push the gas a little more than the speed limit.
Absolutely. Well, our listeners will always relate to you as a member of Monster Magnet. But can you talk a little bit more about the challenges of trying to do something off on your own? Like you said, your creativity was always related to Monster Magnet. You felt like that was a great release for you. You didn't feel like you needed another outlet. But can you talk a little bit more about the challenges you as a solo artist opposed to being a member of Monster Magnet?
Yeah. So the thing is that, like, Dave and I grew up together, right? And Monster Magnet was an established, great band. I watched, my good friend start that band. I was at very early shows. Dave and I played in our first bands together. He went his way. I went my way after that. I moved up to New York, and, we had a lot of the same influences. So when Dave, when he first asked me to join Magnet, I was living in LA. I was starting to pursue more behind the scenes stuff with engineering and production. I was out there working with Matt Hyde, and I became friendly with Joe Barisi and all these guys. So I was really into working towards a career in production and engineering and teching and all that stuff, because I've always loved since I was a kid. Like, how are these recordings that I listen to, how are they made, right? So I know I got sidetracked for a second, but it leads into Magnet. So I never really considered myself much of a guitar player. I just do what I do. I can't sit there and play someone else's stuff. So when Dave had asked me to join the band right after, Power Trip was recorded, I was in LA getting to know Matt pretty well, and they were working on Power Trip together, which led me to working with Matt. So I was kind of like adding my thing to something he already created with Dave's direction, right? And because we had all the same influences, it was like very second nature for me. He didn't really need to tell me what to do. Like when Dave would explain something, it was right there. So creatively, working with Windorf is like, it's beyond it's hysterical, right? Because we go so far back, and we're both like, we can kind of like, when he suggests something, I get it. When I suggest something to him, he gets it. It's almost like we ping pong back and forth. So I've always taken a lot of pride in helping him, where I can with the recordings and seeing his vision through. And when it came to doing this record, I took it all upon myself, and it goes back to, the shelter in place, having to isolate, the pandemic, and I was really, I wasn't one of these people who was overly concerned with it, but I wanted to be careful because I work in New York and I'm in Jersey, and it was kind of a hotbed for a period of time. You really did have to kind of be careful. So me being how I am, being a nut job in the studio, I took it like, I ain't going to talk to anybody. I'm going to stay in my studio, and this is my life for a while. So I just took it upon myself, and, I didn't have any real struggles with it other than that. Like, I wanted to go back to basics of what made me want to play, originally a bass player, but made me want to be in a band, made me want to like explore these different musical ideas and paths and stuff. So with that, I was with myself doing it, and I was like, calling up some friends and, again, getting a lot of inspiration from even just my friends, like, oh, you have to do this. This is a long time coming. So I just buckled down and did it. I didn't think too much about it.
Fantastic.
Did you have one trusty favorite guitar that you used on the album, or how many guitars did you use?
It's funny you bring that up, because going back to what I was just saying, I've worked on a lot of records, and I've been really, really fortunate to work with like great producers. Everyone from like, Zeus, Chris Harris from, when I was working on the Hatebreed stuff with him, and of course Matt Hyde and Joe Barresi, and the list. I've been really, really fortunate. I was around Steve Rosenthal and Matt Wells a lot at the Magic Shop in New York City, and my friend Joey DeMaio, not to be confused with the Joey DeMaio from the band, but Surefire Recording, in Jersey. So, I always think about a lot about my favorite records, like my personal favorite records, and we'll go with the Stooges. We'll go with the Stooges' first record, right? And we'll go with Daniel, my good friend Daniel Ray, with the Ramones' first record. Ron Asheton didn't have 12 guitars and 14 amplifiers to play through.
Yeah.
Johnny Ramone had one Mosrite and a little amplifier. So I wanted to keep things really, really simple. I have access to so much stuff. I'm like, I am going to narrow it down. These are the 2 amplifiers I'm going to use. These are the 3 guitars I'm going to use. This is the 1 bass I'm going to use, to keep that consistency. Because when you listen to those old records, there's that familiar sound from like a Motorhead record. Yeah. It sounds like each guitar, there's little differences, but there's that consistency through the drums and bass and low end. So I went to my SG and my Les Paul, and I tell this funny story. One night I was like, you know what, I'm going to use a Strat. And truth be told, I sound terrible on a fucking Strat. So I spent all day recording. I'm like, I'm going to use this Strat. I'm going to do it like this because this is what I've heard. I'm going to get all fuzzed out with a Strat. And I recorded it, and I took a drive, and I went home, and I listened to the track. I was like, it sounds fucking terrible. And I just picked up the SG and redid everything in like an hour after spending all day trying to make myself sound good on a Strat. So I went with the SG. I went with the SG and Les Paul, the same couple of pedals throughout the whole thing, and that was really it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you spoke of your work with the late Todd Youth back with Capricorn days. There's no bigger influential New York hardcore legend than somebody like Todd Youth. Can you talk a little bit more about how Todd influenced you during your time when you collaborated with him? Excuse me.
Well, yeah. So I when I was in that band Blitzbeer in the late 80s into the 90s, and I was a big fan of coming from the original punk rock days, of seeing the Ramones and the Cramps and Suicide and the Heartbreakers as a teenager, that whole CBGB's Max's Kansas City thing. When that kind of fizzled out and hardcore started bubbling up, I was going to a lot of shows, and I was going to see, Reagan Youth, the original Cro-Mags lineup, Murphy's Law, Agnostic Front, and all the original New York hardcore scene. I fell in love with it because the early days, it felt like an extension of the punk rock thing. And after the Bad Brains came to town, and I had seen Harley and the Stimulators, and I was such a fan of Harley, and then I met Jimmy and Todd, and so you fast forward to a little bit later after I had Blitzbeer, we're all hanging out, and they asked me to do a tour with them, and because they needed a bass player, so I did that, and Todd and I hit it off right away because I had seen Todd in Warzone before he was in Murphy's Law, and
yes.
And all these other things. And, so what I didn't know about Todd at the time, how influenced he was by hard rock, and at one point Todd was living with me, and I'd come home from driving a cab, and he'd be like, learning Kiss riffs. And I'm like, you like Kiss? He's like, I love Kiss, and then with the Capricorn thing, Todd went on to do, after the Murphy's Law thing, he always had these little projects he was working on, and we're always like really supportive of each other's stuff as musicians and creative stuff, and as guitar players. You're always bouncing ideas off of each other. And he hit me up to do that little Capricorn thing. He was between projects, and I was going back and forth while I was in Magnet, going back and forth to LA a little bit and spending time with him and some other people. What Todd influenced me was that the guy was just a smoking guitar player.
Yes.
Smoking guitar player. Like Todd smoked. Like he could play anything. It didn't matter what was in his hands. He was one of those guys and a real character, right? So kind of like the influence from Todd was to keep that burning love of why we do it in the first place. And we really, really, really bonded over our love for Motorhead. I love Motorhead. It's no secret. And when Todd did a brief stint playing in Motorhead, we really, really, I couldn't have been happier for him, and that he was on stage with Lemmy. And he knew Todd would ask me a lot about, well, what's the pre-Motorhead stuff? I turned him on to all the Hawkwind stuff and all these other things that I grew up with. And it was just that we just really liked each other, and as you go through your life as a musician, there's certain people you just get along with better than others, and you bond with better than others. And it was always it was never like a competition. It was always like an encouragement. Like when he was playing with Glenn Campbell, here's the kid who played an agnostic front in Warzone. Forget about all the other stuff. He's playing with Glenn Campbell?
Exactly.
What the fuck? It was amazing.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I miss the dude a lot. And, in the back of my mind, some of this stuff, because a few of the riffs were around, the main one was the song Heroes. That was a leftover riff from the Capricorn stuff that I had played for Todd the last time he was in New York. And we had talked about doing it again, doing another recording again. And he really, really loved that track. And he's like, oh, we got to finish that. We got to do that next time. We got to do that next time. And unfortunately, we never got to do it. But I was able to do it and kind of as kind of my subtle, little tribute to Todd on the record, that I just didn't write about it and stuff like that. But that was my thing for Todd, that particular song.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. That's one of the things I was going to ask you is just, you had mentioned having different riffs laying around for over the years. What's the oldest track from the album?
The oldest one would be Now Is Forever, actually. Because I had wrote that, kind of kind of way back. I probably wrote that song 7 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe. When I was first starting to, I first got a home recording set up, and I was messing around with stuff, and it was one of the first things I put down, start to finish, and that was the first one, really. Yeah.
Oh, so cool. Over the years, we've seen many artists from prominent bands release a one-off solo effort, project, album, whatever you want to call it, then stay the course with their main band, such as you, Monster Magnet. But as far as in your head goes, do you plan on doing another solo endeavor, or is this just going to be that one-off thing? Hey, I released my creativities on the solo end of things. Now I'm ready to get back into Monster Magnet stuff, or what's going to happen in the future for you?
Well, I initially, I could not have done this without the involvement of Wendigo Productions in New York. They were the ones who helped me out, get me into the studio to take some time off of work and get this record together. So my initial talks with them were to this is just going to be it. I might not ever play this. I don't know. And they were really, really great that They just want to help people do stuff. It's a great little company. My old friend Raphael works there and works for Wendigo. And she was like, "Look, we just want to help you get your creativity out there with whatever this leads to. We support it, right?" So initially that was it. But as the records got released, and as as Dave and I get older, I am thinking about if the time is right and it makes sense, maybe do a couple of shows here and there, and I have more stuff. So I'm not opposed, and I'm not going to shut the door on doing another recording. What it'll be, I don't know, because I'm influenced by all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm working on a project right now with these local dudes in Jersey that's so different than anything I've ever worked on, that it's given me this mental influence of different avenues to go down. Not that I'm going to be, you're not going to get, you see a lot of guys in bands well, here's my super sensitive side.
Yeah.
That doesn't really fucking exist with me.
Yeah.
That ain't going to happen. Here's my singer-songwriter shit. My singer-songwriter shit will be me down in the subway recording the train on my phone, trying to figure out how to write a song around that. You know what I mean? And I'm really influenced by bands like Suicide, where that was just Alan Vega screaming in these really, really great things with some weird shit behind it. I love the Velvet Underground. You don't know what's going to come, but and and I've talked to Dave about it, Windorf, a little bit about that too. He was like, you should do more stuff. You never know what it's going to lead to. And I think I'm glad I waited. I'm glad I never did this before, and not so much that I waited because I never really thought about doing other than the little things I've done, about a solo career, about, something that's more myself. And that's why I decided to call it by my name, by my last name, because I was thinking about project names and stuff like that, and they all sounded kind of silly to me. And then everyone was going to say, "Oh, it's Phil Caivano from Monster Magnet." Anyway, I'm like, "Well, I'm going to use my last name. Fuck it, fuck it. It's so personal to me." So yeah, I'm open to doing some other stuff.
Fantastic. Your experiences over the years with doing promotional videos and stuff with Monster Magnet, are you planning on doing any with any of your solo material?
Yeah, there's some talk about that. There's some talk about maybe some lyric videos and things like that. But right now it's been all flying by the seat of my pants with this thing that little things are coming up, and I'm not the best at social media and stuff like that and YouTube channels and things, but I'm getting there. So I'm at the end of the day, I just want to have fun with this thing. Yeah. I don't want it to feel like a chore. I want it to feel fun because, music is something, and I think guys in bands, it becomes a chore, and it becomes a grind. And I got so inspired by my roots and what made me want to do this in the first place. And it's in my DNA. And I just want to keep having fun with it. So learning how to post a video on Instagram, right? There might be a 10-second video that took me 6 hours to figure out how to do. You know what I mean? Because I'm a knucklehead. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and I get a lot of encouragement from people who rib me and "Oh, look at you, you fucking idiot." You know what I mean? You don't know what I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not going to pretend I do. But it's the fun factor. Yeah. It's the fun element, and it's the driven element that I think sometimes as artists, music is art, right? I'm a big fan of just art, that we lose touch of why when we were a kid and had that dream and had, found that record or whatever, painting or whatever it may be, comic book, whatever it may be that inspired us to move forward with those thoughts and dreams and hopes and stuff. And wanting to be like not even so much wanting to be different, but knowing like, you know, that was like the punk rock thing for me. And I hate to label punk rock, but like that time in music history for me was so important that like I love tapping into that because I never want to forget that.
Oh.
I don't want to be like, oh, well, you know, what are the numbers? What are the ticket sales tonight? Blah, 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 blah. You know, like, you know, you get so jaded.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been through that. I'm not that guy. I can't do it. I'd rather fucking pump gasoline, you know. That's why I still live in Jersey. We can pump fucking gas. You know what I mean? You can still get a job pumping gas if you want to. You know, so you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys know. You guys are attached to it.
Absolutely. You know, but it wouldn't behoove us if we didn't bring up Monster Magnet. You know, since your time in the band, through the albums that the band has made, do you have a favorite? And then do you have a Monster Magnet album that you've been a part of that you feel maybe wasn't the best interpretation of the band?
You know, that's a great that's a great question because the one record that I played on that was my first with Dave actually playing on it, like I was around the making of Power Trip because I was living in LA. And by me living in LA and being with Dave and the guys a lot, that's what kind of led him to ask me to move back east, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So the record after that was God Says No. I love that record. I think it's a really, really unsung Monster Magnet record. I think that like following Power Trip was really difficult for that particular record. I won't say for Dave and I won't say for myself because we were at where we were at the time. And that's what I love about Windorf is he writes where he's at the time. But the thing with that record, if I could say anything, my only criticism all these years later is that it's too long. You know what I mean? Like the core of it's fantastic. It was so much fun. Like here we are in the studio. You know, I had toured with Magnet. All the touring for Power Trip took me to a lot of great places. Here I went from like never being on a bus to, you know, I only ever toured in cars and vans and stuff like that. And here I was on a bus with my old childhood friend and we're playing all over the fucking place and doing great tours, you know. And so to be in the studio, what we were working for, like I have such a fondness for that particular record because it was the first one. And then the other record that I really, really, really love is that I would say that Dave and I really put ourselves out there on was Last Patrol. We really worked hard on that record, and it was another one where, you know, after putting the band, not having made some records for a number of years, and I'm going brain dead. The record before that, we made that first record back, Mastermind, I believe.
Yeah.
That was a ton of fun. But when we went in to record Last Patrol, Dave and I, like, he wanted to go a little more space rock, back to the roots of space rock, which we love. And it was just a lot of fun, you know, again, like with me, like, you know, Dave will come over and give me these little demos he made. And to hear that vision of those demos where he was at, when he was writing the core of Last Patrol, to help him and be by his side to get that done in the studio to make the record was fantastic. We were just nonstop on that record. And it was the first one that I think Barisi mixed, you know, and then it led to the reimagined stuff. And I love the reimagined stuff that we did to take, like, that was so wild that here we were, like, doing different versions of the same songs. Like, it's like we couldn't stop working. It was so fun. And working with Barisi out in LA on the mixing of it was really, really great. So I love that one.
Fantastic. I have actually 2 questions left for you. So I kind of like to throw this upon Jeff and catch him off, and I think I'm going to do that tonight. But, like you said, you listen to all kinds of different things, to influence you in your creativity process. But what have you been listening to right now?
Right now, I have been listening to... What have I been listening to right now? Well, to be honest with you, after the tour that we just did, Garrett Sweeney and I really bonded with Garrett over this record called Outrageous, made by Kim Fowley in the late 70s. The late 60s. It's fantastic. It's like so over the top. I've been listening to, digging deep on stuff like that. I've been listening to a lot of Rocky Erickson again. I love Rocky Erickson. I've been listening to, some of my favorite old, I'll drive around and I'll listen to Charlie Parker and I listen to Miles Davis. And then all of a sudden, I got the other thing I've been really listening to a lot of is Mark Bolan. I love Mark Bolan and T-Rex and, that whole glam era, like kind of like the pre-Bowie stuff, like what was going on in the UK, like bands like Slade and Mott the Hoople. Of course, those I found all these like demos of Bolan, these weird acoustic demos, and they kind of brought me back to Rocky Erickson and like all those kind of things. That's kind of where I've been at like lately.
Oh, fantastic. Jeff, what have you been listening to?
Oh man, my tastes are all over the place. But I discovered a band I'd never heard of before. It was I think they're called Ozma. Rock and Roll Part 3 is the album, and I think it came out like in 2002, 2001, I think. But they're kind of a Weezer clone. They actually sound... The whole album sounds like it's like a lost Weezer album or something, but
that's great.
But it's a great album worth checking out for anybody that likes Weezer.
Well, the other one that I like a lot, that I went on this kit, the band that I like a lot, not too far from you guys, that I thought I really love John Brannon from Easy Action and Negative Approach. And I was listening I go through these stages where I love the Easy Action records, but the Laughing Hyenas records,
yes,
to me were so underrated and underappreciated. And I did this thing for this magazine as a few years back, like, hey, what are the best 3 records of the year? I was like, well, the reissues of the Laughing Hyenas records, because finally able to get them on vinyl again, and they were badass.
Absolutely.
They were just so amazing, and like there was a lot of stuff out of Chicago from Wax Trax and Amphetamine Reptile Records, and then all those other things from that part of the country. I'm a big Detroit guy. I love music from Detroit. I love the whole thing from Motown to soul to the Stooges to Negative Approach. You know what I mean? It's like there's something about that part of our country that I really, really admire and love. And that was a big reason why I chose to print my records through Third Man, because the Detroit thing. I very easily could have gotten my vinyl printed a lot of other places, and I was like, you know what? I want to do it. I want to do it with Third Man. I want to do it out of Detroit, and I love that. When we made the jackets, that they like for you to put manufactured in Detroit, Michigan, not made in the USA.
Oh,
you
so
know what
cool.
I mean?
Nice. Yeah.
I think that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, that is.
I've been listening to the soundtrack to the Dogtown and Z-Boys documentary from Stacy Peralta. But the reason why I love the soundtrack so much is it's got some of my favorite songs on there. It has Easy Rider, Jimi Hendrix tune, Generation Landslide by Alice Cooper, T-Rex, Children of the Revolution, and, of course, Gimme Danger with the Stooges, Iggy and the Stooges. Fantastic soundtrack. It's like, I think it's one of those kind of soundtracks where it's maybe not have been explored because it's a documentary instead of a major motion picture.
I love that documentary, and I'm a big fan. Not that I could do it because I'll break my neck, but like a big fan of skate culture.
Absolutely.
I love skate culture, and I love that documentary. And I know some dudes that were like involved as I've been really fortunate being in Magnet, being like, guys who were like, they're like, man, we used to skate the Spine of God and, Dopes to Infinity and, and like, it's great. And that whole, see, I like anything that's underground. If something's underground and skate culture when I was growing up and like, I'm really good friends with a guy in Jersey named Russ Igley. He's a bass player from the band Underdog. And
Yes.
Russ was a big surfer, skate guy, and like surfers and skaters to me are so cool. I just wish I could do it, and I just admire it. I just admire it so much.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned Underdog, The Vanishing Point is probably one of my all-time favorite albums. I mean, that Underdog album is second to none as far as hardcore music goes.
Oh yeah, I love that you brought that up because to me, that record really kind of flies under the radar. I don't think it gets enough credit because at that time, hardcore was kind of changing,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Like there was a whole wave in New York that was really, really interesting, kind of like that bred off of hardcore, like bands like The Unsane, bands like Cop Chew Cop. There was a whole slew of bands, but with the hardcore stuff, bands like Quicksand started happening. And I feel like that record was very influential. And it's funny, like when I hang out with Russ, we rarely talk about that stuff. We always goes back to like, what we're doing, where we're at in our lives, and we hang out. We'll go down by, we live not that far from each other, and like, we just hang and talk shit on the phone or whatever and stuff like that. Or, it's funny. That's a great record. Richie was really, really a great front man. Really is, still, is really, really great. Really.
I own it on CD. I own it on vinyl. I listen to it religiously. I remember the first time I walked into my neighborhood record store when I was a kid, and a friend of mine who was working at the record store, Greg Thompson, he had it on, and it definitely was different than anything else that hardcore was doing at the time, because they even got into dabbled with a little reggae in that album. It was so cool.
Yeah, and there was a big, like I didn't love it at the time. Like I was a big fan of when the Bad Brains first hit New York City, right? When the Bad Brains first hit New York, it was all about playing faster, and here these guys were just like ripping it up. They were like, they even looked like mods, so here were these badass guys on stage playing these places. They took New York by storm. But when they started doing the reggae stuff, I didn't appreciate it at the time. I was like, reggae? I didn't come here to see this. I came here to see, the fast stuff, right? And then I see years later just the influence, and I love that those guys did what they wanted to do, and it branched off. And other bands like Todd used to drive me crazy with the Bad Brains reggae stuff. I'm like, dude, this sucks. You want reggae? I want to hear dudes from Jamaica. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear dudes from DC playing reggae. He's like, no, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. And you got to give the Bad Brains a lot of credit for doing what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with music. You have to do what you're driven to do and what you want to do at the time. And a lot of people, you're going to get flack for it. Like some people are not going to like it. And that's just fine. That's what art is all about, doing what you want to do at the time. I got sidetracked there, but the Underdog stuff, I just love Russ and those guys. Great influence.
Yeah, absolutely. So
and all I wanted to say was just the soundtracks and the various artists compilations. It's like, the art of the deep cut, I discovered a lot of bands in the 90s of, I know Monster Magnet was on several soundtracks and stuff, and just discovered a lot of bands that way. And that's kind of like a lost art in the digital age.
Totally. And it's really hard for I know a few filmmakers and stuff. It's really hard to make that work and be cohesive. And then there's always something else you feel like you maybe should have added or subtracted, but like, I agree with you. I was a big fan of compilation records and when I was a kid, of like, that's how I got into garage rock, through like compilation records and soundtracks of like, the big compilation record back then was Nuggets. And that was put together by, I believe, Lenny Kaye from the Patti Smith group, and just all these different garage rock bands that only had like regional singles at different times, and that led me into learning about the 13th Floor Elevators and like all these other bands, and you realize with the influence, the Moving Sidewalks that a guy named Billy Gibbons was in, do you know what I mean? And like all these pockets of our country had all this great stuff that was the main influence of what was to come later with the English stuff. Like, I do have a big place in my heart for like, the Sex Pistols, the Damned, Eater, this dude named Johnny Moped. When my buddy Doug came from the UK, he went on a trip to the UK with his family. He brought back all these punk rock records that we were only reading about at the time in magazines. He'd never heard the Sex Pistols at that point, but he came back with this single, Anarchy in the UK, and the Clash's first record and all this shit. And I was like, wow, this is really, really cool shit. Like, I didn't know. I was just so trapped in like, the Ramones and the Dead Boys and the Cramps and all that stuff. The English stuff was really, really great. And then you have the LA stuff starting to come with, the Black Flags and, Black Flag, Circle Jerks and all that stuff started coming. It was just like a musical revolution.
It was.
And it all dates back to me, to the garage rock stuff. Which it just keeps on going back and back. And to me, the one band that was, I'm a big Lou Reed fan, and with the Velvet Underground, then you get where they got it from. It just keeps going back and back and back, and I love that stuff.
Yeah, us as well. And one last question for you, then we'll leave you alone for the evening. I asked this question to all of our guests: the mystery of rock and roll. With the dawning of the internet and social media, there is no Zeppelin, there are no Ramones, there's no Kiss any longer. But for you, as the artist and the fan of rock and roll, what do you like more, the mystique and mystery of rock, or do you like this new age of accessibility? Because if we didn't have the internet, we wouldn't be doing this with you tonight. So, where are your thoughts at?
Well, of course, I love the search, right? So I grew up with, waiting for, Rock Scene to come out, the magazine Rock Scene, and seeing this, they would have this section in the back, more new bands. And that's, being a big, New York Dolls fan. Before I started going to see a lot of that stuff, I found out that Johnny Thunders, who's one of my all-time favorite guitar players, had a new band called the Heartbreakers. So that search of like the mystery of it all, yeah, I love that. But now you fast forward, you're right. Like, I have a 17-year-old nephew who is like so fucking cool. Like, I remember being on tour and he calls me and goes, I got a question for you. And I'm like, what is it? He goes, have you ever heard of a band called Black Flag? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, what can you tell me about them? I'm like, a lot. What do you want to know? I saw them the first time on the East Coast. I'm friends with Keith Morris, and I love Dez, and I go, and I even like all the Rollins stuff that gets shit talked on. I love My War and all the stuff. And he's like, I'm like, well, how did you find out about them? He goes, well, I was reading this interview online I found with Kurt Cobain, and he mentioned Black Flag, and I'm a big Nirvana fan, and I just wanted to find out where Kurt got it from. Mm-hmm. So then you fast forward to that, the internet's a great place. Mm-hmm. The internet is like, if you want to, see a video from, there's stuff that, you guys know, this is what you do. You can find like a T-Rex video. You can find a Slade video on Top of the Pops. Like, how many people really remember that, like, Mark Bolan had a TV show and he had the Damned on, you know what I mean? And like, Mark Bolan was so far ahead of his time in so many different aspects, where between the music stuff and then, promoting the punk rock stuff when it was really, really small in the UK. you know? So I love both sides of it. I think as an older musician, I don't, you know, and I also do love to shut it all off. But how can you know, like, I would have done the same thing if I was a kid now.
Sure.
I would have been searching it out.
Yeah.
It's really the time you grew up with. Like, I appreciate the time I grew up in, right? But I also want to pass the torch, right? I think too many guys hold on, well, you know, what it was like, you know, what it was like back then. You kids don't know. I don't want to be that bitter old dude. It's stupid. It doesn't make sense. It's like, do I want to draw, you know? Hey, look, hey, do I miss my horse and buggy? You know what I mean? Like, you know, do I really, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
evolve, and it's important as musicians and creative people and journalists or whatever it may be to involve with the times, you know, like, you know, I remember the days, like the only time like fanzines and stuff, it was very, very local, you know what I'm saying? And like, you know, now I'm able to do interviews all over the place and do international stuff and do stuff right here at home. I'm doing an interview from my car. You know, how great is that?
Yeah.
It is. It truly is. We're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
Just that, like, you know, I'm happy that people are digging this record. You know, we're going to start to, you know, it's available in the streaming, of course. We do have vinyl available through Downright Merch, and we're looking to, right now we're in the process of getting some more physical product into some mom and pop brick and mortar stores and stuff like that. But like, I just appreciate it. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm having a lot of fun with this thing, and I had a lot of fun making this record. I can't speak enough about Bob Pantella's involvement with like pushing me on that side of this to get it done with, you know, recording it and mixing it. But like, it's been a gas, and, you know, I'm like, I never really put too much thought into what people were going to think of it, other than that, I wanted to do it, and it was my time to do it, you know? And I'm really having fun with it. And I remember, you know, I read like one review, it was like, it said, you know, I don't pay attention to that stuff. And someone's like, oh, you know, Caivano's records are really, really good, but he's no Dave Windorf. I'm like, I ain't trying to be Dave Windorf. There's only one of that motherfuckers. And he's fucking awesome. And he's my best friend. He's the dude that I've known for my whole life. And I never, ever would ever, and I have to say, and I'll wind it out with this, is that my main thing with this record, and to wind it out with Monster Magnet, to get the encouragement from the band and the main guy I've been making music with my whole life to support me in doing this, and that's Dave Windorf.
Oh,
when Dave was like pushing me to do it, even though, you know, through the pandemic and we weren't busy and we're looking at what we're going to do, and he's not worried about like what's not going on. He's pushing me to finish my record. It couldn't have made me happier.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is fantastic. Well, this is how things are going to work out. We're about 2 weeks behind on our episodes. So Jeff, the editing wizard over here, will get it all cleaned up. And when it's out, we'll send it to you, and please share it wherever you can.
Oh, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it, guys. I had a lot of fun with this one. Really, really great.
Thank you so much, Phil. It was an honor to have you on tonight.
Yeah, we really enjoyed having you.
All right, thank you guys a lot, man. Have a good one.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
just can't do it here. Hey. Everybody eyes the gun and screams inside their head. Everybody bites their tongue and pays their bills instead. Hide in the spotlights, fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances. Everybody knows the game is fixed, there is no prize. Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever take from you, then you plug out both their eyes. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.